Hey you guys, it's Peter, and of course I'm back. And today I want to do a little bit more, just indulge me, I want to do a little bit more of a serious video today on here. So I'm not going to do my intro and flipping fans and all that kind of stuff. And every once in a while on this channel, I like to talk about things that are very personal to my heart, very, I think, important, and things that I think that we need to discuss in the world. I usually put these kinds of videos on my Peterisms channel, so if this is a video that you like of mine, or if this is a video that is more of, hey, I like this kind of style of Peter, go check out my Peterisms video, go check out my vlog. This is more of what you get over there. And I've been thinking a lot today about kind of how I wanted to do this video, how I wanted to do it in a respectful way, and just, you know, tell my story, tell my truth, which is what I always do. And so I think, that I'm just going to kind of break it down for you and explain what happened. So I have received, I cannot even tell you how many countless messages in the last 24 hours from people asking me to make a video response to Demi Lovato's supposed or alleged relapse. That is not what this video is going to be. I'm not willing to do that on camera. I consider Demi Lovato, even though I've never met her, I consider her a sister in sobriety. I would never do that to somebody in sobriety. I can't imagine getting sober and getting clean and sober, or dealing with relapse, or dealing with the issues that are so difficult that come along with addiction and recovery in a public forum. I just really honestly can't imagine that, especially having shared so much of my sobriety with people. And I think this is important for you guys to know. So I got sober December 17th of 1994. I have been sober for 23 and a half years. I'm very involved in a 12-step program. Many of my friends are in recovery. And if you watch my other channels, what you'll know, and I've talked a lot about this on my vlog, is that in the last couple years, I have had some very, very close friends, two very close friends, that have gone back out, and have relapsed. And these are people that had double-digit years of sobriety. One person had over 10 years, and the other person had over 20 years of sobriety. 20 years of sobriety. And, you know, it breaks my heart. And what happens typically when this occurs, if they don't get back in and get sober, which they didn't, they chose to go a different way, a different journey, which is their choice, you know. People are, I think, under the assumption that a lot of times we choose to not have those people in our lives anymore. The reality is, even when I've reached out to them or tried to have relationships with them, I haven't heard a lot back in response, you know. So those people, it's just kind of like, it's hard, you know. It's like you're grieving the loss of this friendship that you've had. I also know that I'm not God, so I don't know what somebody's path or journey is. I don't know if their path or journey is for them to get sober, or for them to find spirituality, or for them to go to church, or a Buddha, or Buddhist temple. I don't know what their journey is, okay? And that's not my place to say. All I know is that my place is to take care of myself, to be the best example that I can be of what my sobriety looks like, and to share my experience, strength, and hope with the world. That being said, I've shared a lot about my story, as she has, and I have talked a lot about my sobriety on here. I'm not above picking up and using again. I'm not above relapsing. It could happen to me today. If I don't keep myself in check and do the things that I need to do, this could be my story. And to think about all the people that have reached out to me, and I'm not even anywhere near on this public level, all the people that have reached out to me, you know, through the last 2 years since I've been sharing my story, and have said, you've helped me so much, or I went into treatment because of you, or you've helped me with a family member, or a spouse, or a boyfriend, or girlfriend, or whatever. You know, to know that I had done all that, and then I myself went back out, I think would be really tough, you know, on top of all of the pressure of all of it, okay? So, out of respect of that, I'm not going to talk about that issue, but I do want to talk about what I think, like what happened to me yesterday with all of this. And it's important for me to share that I had heard about Demi Lovato, and I like read an article, I think on TMZ or something, I mean, it baffles my mind to sit here, and I'm not passing judgment, but I just can't imagine, like, my worst nightmare, everything that I have in my life, everything that I have is based on my sobriety and my recovery. Everything. I put it above everything else. I put it above my marriage. I put it above my careers. I put it above my family relationships, because if I am not sober, if I am not clean and sober, then I don't have any of that. So my worst nightmare is going back out there. It terrifies me. You know, and I have to remember that, very much like many newcomers that are out there, that if I'm not doing the things that I need to do, I'm just as close to a drink or a drug as well. And I need to take care of myself on a daily basis, keep myself in check, make sure that I have peace of mind, make sure that I'm cleaning up the wreckage of my past, making sure that I am, you know, working with my sponsor, you know, working a 12-step program, doing the things for me that make me a better person. And I'm not saying that you have to do that. There are many different ways that people can use to stay sober. That's just what works for me. That being said, my worst nightmare being played out in the public arena, I cannot even imagine, okay? I cannot imagine. I went through several treatments, and the last one that I went through was in 1994, and that was the last time I've ever used any kind of drug or drank. And I don't say that for any kind of pats on the back. I don't say that to be arrogant or egotistic, because I don't think of it that way. I think of it as I have today, and I have to do the things today, you know, and today, if you watch my videos, something that I talk about on a regular basis is emotional sobriety. And that emotional sobriety is extremely important to me. And what emotional sobriety means is that once I put down the drink and the drug, I still got so much shit inside of me, right? I still have all of this pain and this hurt and all this stuff that I was just filling up with and numbing with drugs and alcohol. And until I was really willing to take a look at that stuff, I wasn't, you know, able to really have any kind of emotional sobriety where I had peace of mind in my life. It's important for you to know there were 4 years that I never stepped into a 12-step program, not once. I didn't go to any kind of meetings. I was really not in a healthy place in my mind. I had no spiritual foundation. I had no emotional sobriety. It was very scary for me. I never once said I didn't need it, but I just wasn't willing to go. And the further and further away I got, the more scared I was to go back. And one day I kind of had an emotional breakdown. This is kind of like me sharing my story in here. I haven't done this in a while, but I made a list of things I needed to do that day, and it was like run errands, vacuum, fold laundry, and I just completely broke down and lost it. And I called my best friend, Tanya, who has been my best friend, and she allows me to share her story as well. She's been my best friend for 21 years of sobriety, and she's my heartstone. I love her so much, you know? And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her, you know? Love you, gal. And I called her and I said, would you take me to a meeting tonight? And she said, and this is important for you guys to know, this was 6 years ago. So this was, you know, what, 17, 18 years sober? And she said, I've been waiting 4 years for you to tell me that. Or for 4 years for you to ask me that. So we went to a meeting that night, and that meeting ended up only being 5 people. And I'll never forget that meeting. It was so powerful. And we drove home that night, and I said, you know, do you want to go to a meeting tomorrow? And she said, you know, you've been gone for 4 years not going to meetings, but I've been going to meetings regularly. So no, you go tomorrow. It'll be good for you to go alone. And on that way home that night, I listened to this speaker lead. And in the lead, this young lady said, it's hard to fall off the wagon when you're sitting in the middle of it. And I heard that, and it was so poignant to me. Because what I realized was I had never sat in the middle of the wagon of recovery. I had never reached out to my hand to a lot of newcomers. I had never really shared my truth. I had never really been honest. And I went on this journey of owning my truth and being completely honest in and out of the rooms of recovery, and really telling my story and telling my truth and owning it and really working on my shit, that painful shit that had just like been eating at me alive for at that point 17 to 18 years of my life and so many years before that. And I was done being in pain. I didn't want to be in pain anymore. And see, one of the things that we don't tell you is that there are a lot of people out there that are sober, that are clean, that are really struggling inside. They're really hurting inside, see, because we get clean and sober and we do the things we're told, but sometimes we don't know how to get honest even with ourselves. And that honesty piece is really, it's important, which is why honesty and integrity is so important to me today, you know? I'm no better than anybody sometimes it doesn't really feel like I have 23 years. Sometimes it feels like I have just a couple years because I've just been working as hard as I've been working in the last couple years and at the beginning of my recovery. But there were many years in between that I didn't. So yes, I think that relapse is very, very real for a lot of people. I think that it can happen to anybody. It's a blessing that it didn't happen to me. I don't know how it didn't happen. I was around a lot of alcohol. I was in and out of a lot of bars. I was around a lot of, illicit drugs in the 4 years that I didn't come to meetings, but somehow I didn't pick up. I don't know how that is. And I can only believe that that's what I choose to believe, a God thing. But I started doing things different when I came back in. And I started to take my sobriety extremely seriously, even more so than I ever had before. I'd always been, even standing in a bar, if somebody said, hey, do you want a drink? I'd say I'm sober. I've been sober, for a long time. I've always been honest about that. That's really that's my safety guard. I never hid from that. I think it was important for people to know. I've never relapsed, okay? But that doesn't mean that it can't be a part of sobriety. I know people that have relapsed after 5 years, after 10 years, after 15 years, come back in and gotten sober again and now have 20 plus years of sobriety. I know people like that. I know people that you would never know had relapsed a million times. My mother got sober 6 months after I did, and we had an amazing relationship as a result of her sobriety. After she passed away, I found all of her tokens that she had gotten through the years. You get, on certain sobriety birthdays. And in there, I found that she had about 10 or 15 start over tokens that I wasn't aware of that she had gotten before she ever had her first sobriety or her first day clean and sober. And, I never knew that. I never knew that my mom had gone to a lot of meetings, tried to stay sober and couldn't. And it's hard. It's so hard, and the reason that it's hard is because it's a disease. And this is important to me on many different levels, but I want to tell you what happened yesterday. So I heard about Demi Lovato, and I was very sad. I thought, oh, wow, this is tragic, I'm a true believer that when you're in the middle of the greatest tragedy in your life, look up and say thank you because you're about to learn a very valuable lesson, or you're being put in a position to have a life-changing moment. Don't forget that. When I've gone through some of the greatest tragedies in my entire life, I look up and I say thank you because something is coming my way that is profound and that is important and is life-changing. So I saw this happen yesterday, and then I was getting ready to make a favorites video. I made a favorites video yesterday, and I had all this stuff sitting around me, and literally a minute or two before, I was kind of looking at it, organizing it, and my phone rang. And it was a phone call from the father of a very good friend of mine. And my friend had 18 months of sobriety, and he relapsed yesterday and was in the hospital. I believe that he is doing well and is, going to continue his journey of recovery, hopefully. At least that's what I've been told. But this is somebody that's really struggled. Had several years before and relapsed, several years and relapsed, back and forth. I told, a story about the other night I was talking on my vlog. Actually on my vlog the other night I did a story about my treatment experience and going into treatment. I talked a lot about it over there. I worked in treatment and I went to treatment. And at one point in treatment I had a patient who passed away from sudden sniffing death syndrome. He was huffing computer duster, and he was diving in and out of a pool, and he went into cardiac arrest. His mother, who I have been friends with, since that happened in 2001, has given me some of the greatest advice in my entire life. And I remember when my mom passed away, people were telling me, you need to move on, you need to move on. And I called her up and I said, people keep on telling me I need to move on. And she said, you don't ever move on, you move through. And one of the reasons why I believe that she and I will always have a tie together is that the day that they rushed into the hospital, she called me. And I happened to be the on-call counselor, and she called me and she said, I need you to come to the hospital. He is here. He was huffing in a pool and he went into cardiac arrest. And I went in, and I'll never forget that day. I walked in, and she was walking out of the room, in the emergency room, and I could see him, sitting there. And they had all the tubes and stuff on him. They had just got done working on him, and she just stood there, and she was looking at me, and I ran up to her. And there he was, he was gone. And she said, the disease was just too strong for him. The disease was too strong for him. Since that day, in 2001, I have probably known 50 people that have died, personally, more so indirectly, that have died from the disease of addiction. The disease of opioid addiction, heroin and opiates in our country and in the world is taking over. It is the leading cause of death by addiction. And it is extremely, extremely scary. It is very important for me that people understand that this is not choices. This is a disease, okay? And I'm not in a position to debate this, and I'll explain to you why in just a second. But yesterday I was on having this whole situation happen, and I was having a hard time getting my videos up because I just kind of was like, I was in my head thinking about all this kind of stuff yesterday with my friend. And so I tweeted out, every day I wake up so grateful for my sobriety and my brothers and sisters in recovery, but sometimes I hate the disease. It takes the best people. I'm tired of losing friends. And I got a response to that tweet. And the response was, well, if they died, it's because of their bad decisions and choices. Nobody forced them to do drugs. There's consequences in this life that you have to pay. And if people decided to choose the wrong way, it's their problem. Now, it's important for you to know, I rarely get messy and clap back on Twitter. That's not who I am, so I rarely ever do that. But yesterday I chose to respond, and I said, because the issue of addiction is so personal to me, I'm going to educate you. It's ignorance like this, not people's choices, that kill them. Addiction is defined by the American Medical Association as a disease. And I went in here and I linked the diagnosis by the American Medical Association on addiction being a disease, and I would like to read it to you. Although some overall trends are encouraging, millions of Americans engage in patterns of substance use that are harmful, and a substantial proportion meet diagnostic criteria for substance use disorders. Substance use is a leading cause of morbidity and mortality. Addiction is now recognized as a chronic disease, attributable in part to long-term changes in the patterns of neural activity and connections. Effective prevention and treatment interventions are available, but many who need treatment never receive it. The American Medical Association. So when you want to sit here and you want to debate with me whether or not addiction is a disease, and you say it's not a disease, or it's a disease but it's not a disease like, you're actually saying something very, very ignorant, and I'm not even going to argue with it. It's like saying to somebody that has cancer, cancer's not a disease. That being said, and this is the most important part of the video that I really want to get out there, I don't really care if people think that it's a disease. I don't really care if people think that I have a disease. I don't use me having a disease as an excuse. I know what I need to do to stay clean and sober. And here's the deal. I truly believe I have a lot of willpower, and I know a lot of people don't believe this, but I believe that I have a lot of willpower, and I have a lot of tools and skills today in my toolbox, maybe not so much when I first got sober, to be able to stay clean and sober today. But once I put one sip of alcohol or one drug into my body, I'm screwed, because the disease takes off, okay? And something happens to me that doesn't happen to other people. And that is very, very important for people to understand out there. That is when the disease attacks, is when the alcohol or drug affects our system. And long after we're sober and the drugs are gone from us, we still have a disease inside of us. That's what the emotional sobriety is about. That's why it's so important that we continue to fix these things in our lives so that we can have emotional sobriety. I don't really care whether or not people believe that it's a disease or not. I don't really care if people want to say it's bad choices or it's a disease, but here's the issue. As long as we continue to believe that it's just choices, we are stigmatizing people that have addiction issues, that they are actually bad people trying to get good instead of sick people and trying to get well. As a classified disease, it means that there are treatment options, medical treatment options out there that some insurance companies will pay for, and that there are some options, some money options out there, not by insurance, that will pay for treatment because it is a medical diagnosed disease. This is important to understand. But at the end of the day, whether or not it's choices or it is a disease, it is killing people that I love. And I don't want to lose any more people. I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care if you believe me. I don't care if you believe the American Medical Association. It doesn't matter. We have got to stop debating and arguing whether or not this is a disease. The reality is we have to come together and love these people until they can love themselves, set boundaries and limits with them, help them to suffer consequences, give them tough love, and love them enough that maybe they will want to stay clean and sober. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.